What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and the most powerful being in the history of Marvel Comics is about to return. It's not the one above all, it's not the Beyonder, it's not the Living Tribunal or the Molecule Man, but you will find out at the end of this video, and it is insane! Oh my god. Okay, so continuing on with G.O.D.S, as always, if you need to get caught up, you will find a link to the G.O.D.S playlist at the end of this video. We're only 2 videos in, so pretty easy to catch up. But as a little bit of a refresher here, on one side, we have the natural order of things, and on the other side, we have the powers that be. We know nothing about them, except for the fact that the avatar of the powers that be is a guy named Wynn, basically Marvel's version of John Constantine from DC Comics. And on the other side, with the natural order of things, they're represented by the Centaurs. All we know is that at some point along the line, these two factions went to war. They ended up creating a ceasefire for reasons that haven't been explained yet, and they've been grudgingly maintaining that ceasefire ever since. But things are about to pop off. So what this does is this starts off with a girl named Emily Addison. She's one of the most important people in this comic. The ending is highly relevant to her. So what we end up finding out is that she's what's called a Cassandra. And in effect, there have been 5 true Cassandras over the course of the entire history of the Earth, more or less. We'll find out a little bit more about them. What we're told is that she's been having the same dream for the last 5 years, just continually the exact same dream, but no one is going to act on it. Only she can, and we'll find out why that is here in a second. But what we end up doing is switching over to the Library of Worlds. Now, like we talked about before, the Library of Worlds is a kind of nexus in the multiverse, meaning every universe across the multiverse can access the Library of Worlds. And it's exactly what it sounds like, a giant library with endless information on everything you ever wanted to know about the history of the multiverse and everything within the multiverse, its hierarchy, the godly pantheons, any and all travesties that have happened, the collapse of the multiverse leading up to Secret Wars 2015, it's all there. But what you have here is you have Wynn, Dimitri, and Doctor Strange. Now again, Dimitri technically works for the natural order of things, but he and Wynn have a kind of friendship, and we don't really know the extent of it, but they kind of work together, almost as if like Dimitri is a kind of protege slash assistant for Wynn, most likely keeping an eye on him, and that's it. It's likely just kind of a way to maintain the truce, is really all it is. But in this meeting that's taking place, Dimitri is told to stay here, right? To stay within the Library of Worlds, and Doctor Strange and Wynn go into the meeting. Now, the cool thing about this is that what they're told as they get ready to go in there is that this frog, I know it sounds weird, this guy's well aware of who they are. And what he says is that while the room is normally reserved for the birth of the universe, that tonight they're presenting a limited showing of the Caecilius masterpiece of the Black Swans and the Black Priest. Now, they're not overly important here, but it is kind of a cool little bit because you'll likely see them in some capacity in the Marvel Cinematic Universe during Avengers Secret Wars and Kang Dynasty. So for those of you guys who don't know what they are, the Black Swans were created by Doctor Doom in order to assist him in basically preventing the early destruction of the multiverse by way of the incursions. When it came to the Black Priests, because the incursions were happening and because the multiverse was dying, they were kind of like the multiverse's own defense system. But here's the kicker about this, right? So you know how like here in the United States and any other English speaking country that we just say the word fun? That's it, right? Just F-U-N. The Black Priest didn't work that way. Instead, one priest would say the letter F, and another priest would say the letter U, and a third priest would say the letter N. They didn't memorize words, they memorized letters, and they had to speak in unison to say a word. So it was really cool. It was really wonky, but really cool. Not overly important, just felt like it was kind of a cool little tidbit here. But what it does is it jumps back to Amelia. And again, you guys don't understand. Okay, so again, here's the thing, right? What we're told here, the madness of knowing while everyone else doesn't care to is the last little death of Amelia and the birth of her fully realized Cassandra state. She decides to stop telling people who won't listen what is going to happen, whether they are enemies, friends, or even family. Whether she is ignored, shouted down, or pitied by those who love her, Cassandra is done being ignored. She is done with the wasting of words. When Hy-Brasil sunk into the ocean, a Cassandra wept and watched. She tried to tell them. When El Dorado burned, a Cassandra screamed and looked away. She tried to tell them. It never works. They never listen because they are so well informed regarding the lies they believe. For the blind cannot see, they can only be saved. And it is time for Cassandra to act. Now, this is an important thing here, right? What we're basically being told, Cassandra can see the future, right? But here's the thing. This Cassandra that was there when Hy-Brasil sunk into the ocean was a wholly different person. It's not like this girl's immortal, right? She's just inheriting this ability. It's really all it is. But the Cassandra that saw El Dorado burning was a different one as well. But regardless, these are basically women who can see the future, right? Seemingly one girl is chosen every however many billions of years, presumably, and they serve a particular purpose here. This girl's purpose is not to save, or at least within the context of this story, not necessarily to save. Her actions are actually going to start dooming everybody. But jumping back to Wynn and Doctor Strange, their meeting is actually with the natural order of things. And the reason for this is because, as we talked about in the previous videos, the first real enemy that popped up here was a guy named G.O.D.S, which I still say is the in-betweener, and we'll find out, or at least we'll talk about why that is here in a second. But what this guy did was initiate a Babylon event, basically an event that could lead to the complete and total destruction and ruin of everything. They were able to stop it, but what it did is it led Wynn and Stephen Strange on a kind of trail. Why would a guy just appear out of nowhere, brandishing the staff of the Living Tribunal, trying to initiate a universal and even multiversal cataclysm? Why would he do that, right? It's not something that a person just does. And so there had to have been a larger motivation here. And so once this kind of everybody coming to terms, which is to say, like, the centaurs of the natural order of things, they know who Doctor Strange is. They're aware of who he is. They don't like him and they don't want him to be here. We don't really know why, but the fact remains that they just don't want him to be a part of this. I would go so far as to say, because Doctor Strange probably represents chaos. I know that it's something that is most often referred to, or at least associated with, the Scarlet Witch, because she channels the power of Chthon and she uses chaos magic. But if you guys remember in Jonathan Hickman's Avengers, the New Avengers, where Stephen Strange originally denied the existence of chaos magic in Marvel Comics, in that story, when he was in the room with no words and he couldn't speak, he channeled chaos magic in order to defeat the Black Swans. So eventually he accepted it was real, and then he used it as a source of power. So I would say that between the natural order of things and the powers that be, he's likely an enigma. Either that, or he's the one that kind of sits and makes sure that the truce is maintained. So neither one of them really like him. Whatever the case happens to be, they're aware of him, they're just not fond of him. But what's said here, at least by the centaurs, is, okay, yes, we're not happy with Stephen Strange being here, but there has to be a reason why Wynn invited him here in the first place. And Wynn says, yes, there is. And that's when Stephen Strange pops up, right? He says, we interviewed the proto-mage behind the Babylon event. What we learned was foreboding. Of course, they're talking about G.O.D.S, and they say G.O.D.S is a reprogrammed, born-again vessel of the in-betweener. That's why I say I think he's the in-betweener, because this was information that was released when Marvel originally announced G.O.D.S at San Diego Comic-Con. So it's not as though it's something that we just weren't aware of before. This information had been out there for a long time, but he says the waves of his actions are neither singular nor without resonance. We believe all the lesser gods are moving, which implies the greater gods are preparing to as well. The question is, are ours? Now, what he means when he says lesser gods and greater gods is explained when you pick up with Dimitri, who's actually at the bar. And what ends up happening is a guy wanders in, and this guy starts talking to Dimitri. Like, Dimitri says, I haven't seen you here before. And this guy says, because I've never been here before. But you already knew that, didn't you? Dmitry Krakow, son of Valeri and Ivana, always looking to the stars, hoping for a miraculous re-entry, and knowing a return of any kind is unlikely, but you must keep looking, you must. When hope is all you have, you dare not lose it. Now, what you're seeing here is this guy kind of manifesting and really talking to Dimitri in his own mind. And the reason is because this guy is a cosmic abstract. What this is basically the difference between greater gods and lesser gods. Lesser gods are guys like Odin, Thor, Zeus, people like that, usually gods that are associated with some kind of planetary or civilization-based society. When it comes to the greater gods, these are abstracts. They are not a byproduct of any group that's out there. And in fact, this is explained quite well by this guy, because Dimitri responds and says, I guess being coy wasn't the move to make here, was it? And this guy responds, any acceptable position that one takes regarding the gods varies wildly depending on whether you believe in them or not. And Dimitri says, well, it's tough to be in this line of work and not believe. And that's when this guy says, faith, what a perfect thing. Now, what I want to point out here is that for people who are eagle-eyed, the identity of this person is revealed. It was revealed when he was talking to Dimitri in a serpent form, and it's also revealed here when he has a kind of cloak that momentarily appears over his head. But he says a growing rarity now, but almost all of humanity was once counted among the faithful. It was what gave man the moral and intellectual anchor necessary to separate yourselves from all the other animals. And so you did. Well done. But of course, you didn't deserve too much credit. It was the simple act of a simple people. After all, we gods did the hard work of creation. All you had to do was not deny it. But then that day came, and far too many of you decided to stop believing. Mankind abandoned gods, told yourselves we were a lie, and that you could replace us with things of your own creation, such as the action of any child, to mimic and then replace their parents. So you people decided to play God, but there was just one problem, one forgotten in all that ignorance and unearned arrogance. While you were made by gods, you were not gods yourselves. What you were wasn't even close. Now, something that I want to specify here, and really what he's talking about, is Marvel's kind of interpretation of how various gods exist, because lesser gods are also beings like Mephisto, the dweller in darkness, right? People who came into existence by whatever manner and whatever means. When it comes to like the origin of the Asgardians, for example, they have a definitive origin in Marvel Comics, but whether it's stories like Earth X or other things like that, Marvel has played very fast and loose with the idea that the Asgardians only exist because humanity imagined them somewhere along the line, and that imagination gave them a physical form. Fear Lords, guys like Dweller in Darkness, right? People like Mephisto, who were really more Hell Lords than anything else, they exist because humanity imagined them and they came into existence, right? There are definitive origin stories there. I don't want to deny that. But again, Marvel kind of dances around that whole thing, right? Do they exist because they're real, or do they exist because they were created? But the idea of referring to humanity as wanting to play God, that's the notion of guys like Thor. That's the idea of people like Matthew Malloy, people like Clyde Wincham, the Marquis of Death, Franklin Richards, people with such astronomical levels of power, whether their powers are revered by other members of the superhero community, or they are looked at as quite literally gods, like the case of Thor. At the end of the day, none of them were ever close, right? This guy says, for man is too flawed, carved from stone, unyielding, evolutionarily static, and built to believe. You are hardwired to follow, a captive of idolatry, created to worship. And so you replaced us with your own creations that you could lift on high and bow down to. Politics and ideology and persona and anima of all sorts. But these were not the divinely inspired creations of gods. They were the flawed work of pretenders, collapsing at creation, built to fail, and fail they did. Now you have lost faith in them as well, and you have nothing left. And so there's this statement that's made by Dimitri where he says, not sure I buy it completely, and it's a sad story, no doubt, but I would think a thing like that would trouble a god. You don't seem troubled. Now, here's the biggest clue to this guy's identity. He says, because I am not like the other gods. I do not desire praise and worship. I have no need for disciples. Now, while this conversation is taking place between Dimitri and this guy, Stephen Strange is still having his meeting with the Centaurs and Wen. But then Cassandra shows up with a gun in hand. And the reason why is because she intends to end this issue. She shows up here in the Library of Worlds. Now, how it is that she was able to access this is largely due to a magical object she has at her disposal. How she was able to use it, how she even knew about it, I don't know. If it's just ingrained knowledge, if she's just been around for so long, nobody really knows for sure. But she shows up here and Stephen Strange immediately panics, right? Like just the eye of Agamotto kicks in, right? The all-seeing eye, like just screams out and he says, suddenly and all at once, we kiss the edge of disaster. Outside, we have to hurry. And so this guy, this mysterious man, starts speaking again because there's this kind of idea that this guy has followers, right? And he says, it's true, my numbers grow, for while I care nothing for the praise and worship of man, there are those who seek me out and find my altar. They receive no special dispensation, no special favor from my hand, right? As this is happening, Cassandra opens fire and she recollects back, right? All the little clues and the things that she'd put together, basically telling her exactly where she needed to go. Because in the hand of one of the people in this Library of Worlds is a little crystal, no bigger than a golf ball. But while this happens, this guy says, no, to them, at least to his followers, I give them the same gift I give to everyone. And it is the greatest gift any human can receive, the permission to do anything you want because nothing matters at all. While this is happening, literally Wen realizes who this guy is, which technically Dimitri did as well. I just didn't include that in the story because I didn't want to spoil this guy's identity. Stephen Strange also seems to know who this guy is. And this is when the reveal comes. It's the greatest ending to a comic that I have read in recent memory. This guy talking directly to Cassandra says, look closely, child, see my face and see the inevitable ash of annihilation. For I am the end. I am Oblivion. My time is now. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, Oblivion, the sum total of nothingness, the guy who will outlive everything in existence. When the one above all dies, the living tribunal dies, the multiverse dies, and every god therein dies, he is all that will remain. This guy is back in Marvel Comics. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. Make sure you guys click this playlist to get caught up on gods, and I will catch you all later. Peace.